Alright, so usually what I do here is I'll do a live stream where I'll test the battery life of the build, and then I'll just kind of live stream it and talk to the chat as I go. Um, but I've done that a little bit recently, and I haven't enjoyed it all too much, just because my chat isn't super active, which, I mean, that's just how it goes. That's not something I can control. Um, and so I thought instead what I could do is just record like a question and answer thing because I have a problem where I don't respond to any DMs almost ever when people message me through like Instagram and Twitter. And that's just because when I released the Wee Boy Color video, I got a lot of DMs. Like, I think I got between 4 and 5,000 over the course of a month. And I responded to all of those. But that just kind of killed my motivation to respond to messages where it's people asking, do you sell portables? How do I build a portable? And so I thought, you know what? I need to go through, I need to delete all those messages. But I want to have something out there that people can go to have those questions answered. Because it's not their fault that I didn't respond to them. It's not because I hate people or I think I'm too cool to respond to DMs. It's difficult to explain. It's pretty miserable to have that many messages all at once. Um, but it worked out in the end, and it was my fault for those messages because I said, hey, if you want to know how much a portable is, you should DM me. So that's a lesson for anyone who's doing anything like that. Maybe don't do that. Maybe set up a website and have people go there. But I just went through and I made a list of questions that are pretty common, and I made some bullet points to kind of help me go along. So I think I've got like an hour and a half of gameplay footage. I have no clue if I'm going to have an hour and a half worth of topics. I wouldn't be surprised if this only lasts like 15 minutes. But we'll see how long I can talk for. And I might do videos like this again. We'll see if I enjoy it. So if you've got a question you want to ask, feel free to drop a comment, leave a like, a subscribe. You know how it is. But yeah, so the most common question I get is, do you still sell portables? Because in the Louis video and in the Wee Boy Color video, I was very, hey, I sell portables. I want to sell portables. Message me. But I do not sell portables anymore. I don't do commissions. That's how I used to do most of my sales. People would DM me, set a price, they'd choose the colors and such. But commissions are very stressful on things like portable Wiis. Because I'm always pressured, not necessarily like by the people who request commissions. I've been very fortunate. Most of the people I do commissions for are very nice, very understanding, very grateful to them. But there's always I should be working on commissions right now, and if I'm not, then I'm wasting somebody else's time who has given me a lot of money. And it's just tough, because sometimes with portables, I'm waiting on parts, or I'm troubleshooting something, and it is just a difficult problem to troubleshoot, and I can't just troubleshoot all day. And so that was a lot of stress. It was a lot of the same requests, which is partially kind of just how commissions on portables have to go, because I have to offer like the same like 2 or 3 different designs, but people would also request the same colors a lot, and it doesn't really seem like doing like constantly different colors would make portables more enjoyable, but it does for me. I love when I get to do a new color scheme or put in some fun buttons. But particularly with the Wee Boy colors, people wanted all white because all white looks really, really good. I can't argue with that. First time I did an all white portable, I was like, wow, this looks great. I should do more of these. But then I ended up doing a lot more of those. And I have pictures of like, I took on about 20 Wee Boy color commissions all at once, and almost all of them were all white. And that was a brutal, brutal experience. And then the other tough part about selling portables is that once I have sold a portable, I'm still responsible for taking care of that portable, and if something goes wrong, I need to be there to fix it. I mean, I can technically just blow it off and say, you bought it from me, your problem now, but I do my best to not be a terrible human being most of the time. And I mean, I'm really the only person who can fix my own portables. Wouldn't it be fair to expect other modders to fix them, or to expect people who don't know how to solder to fix them? And now that I have like 50 to 60 portable Wiis out there in the wild, sometimes they have to come back for repairs. Sometimes for user error, sometimes something is just worn out. Sometimes it was my fault. I didn't put something together quite right, or something wasn't screwed in tightly enough, or a screw post broke. But it's stressful to have all those out there and to sometimes have to interrupt things I'm working on, video projects, personal projects, to go, all right, how to fix this guy's portable because I built it for him, and I need to help him. That's my job. And so that's just another point of stress with building portables. And so I stopped building portables or selling portables around a year ago, and I will still occasionally do sales. Mostly when I have like a really fun case or like an idea for a theme, but I don't want to design a whole portable for it. And so I'll do sales on those portables, but with those I only sell them like when they're finished, when I'm sure they're all good, and then I'll just post them on like Instagram or Twitter and say, hey, this one's available for purchase. DM me if you want it. Here's the price. I usually sell them for $1,500. It's a lot, but there's a lot of demand, and it does take a lot of time to build one. So I can't really feel good about selling one for more than $1,500. That's kind of where I sell them for. But then that raises the question of, well, I still want to buy a portable. Where can I buy one? And the answer is there aren't many places. The one person I know who generally does commissions, I know he's doing them right now, as of the release date of this video, is G-Man Mods. G-Man has built hundreds of portables. He's an incredible portabilizer, very good at commissions. He builds portables better than anyone else, myself included. And so I'd recommend checking with him on his Twitter. I think his Twitter is Gman_mods, maybe Gman Mods, all one word. If you look up G-Man, he should come up. And I think right now he only sells Ashita portables. And I think he sells them for between $1,000 and $1,500, depending on the case you go with and all that. So I'd recommend checking him out, looking at what he sells. I can't guarantee that he's always going to sell portables. I know he takes breaks every so often to work on other things. But highly recommend him. But aside from him, there's no one that I know of right now who sells portables consistently and does a good job on them. There are definitely other people who, if they were to sell portables, they do a great job. But for all the reasons I mentioned earlier, there aren't very many people who want to sell portables. Now, there are a couple of other places that will sell portables. Like if you look on AliExpress, there are like these Chinese portable Wiis, and those are sketchy. They have gotten better, I will say that, but they're very large. The audio quality on them is terrible, and the battery management systems on them range from non-existent to moderately sketchy. I've seen ones where there's no battery management system, ones where there's simple battery management systems, which usually is enough in a portable, like a portable Wii. That's what people used to do like 5 years ago before you get fancy with battery management stuff. But I would steer clear of AliExpress portables as much as you can, because the support on those is not great. Occasionally there will be people who reach out and go, hey, I've got this portable I bought from China. I can't get in contact with the seller anymore. Will you fix it? And the answer is no, I will not fix that. I'm sorry. Because those are somewhat shoddily built. They're very large, and I don't really know how to fix them. So I wouldn't recommend those. Another place portables sometimes crop up is on eBay. eBay, sometimes portables will come up, like either portables that somebody has built and is looking to immediately sell, or sometimes like an old portable that I've built or G-Man has built or someone else has built pops up on there. But I personally would be very careful buying eBay portables, because that's another situation where the seller doesn't really have any guarantee to like help you out with the portable after you buy it. And some people will be nice and they'll help you out and they'll fix any issues with it. But there's not really any repercussions for not doing that when people sell portables on eBay. I know right now, I looked just recently because I was writing down bullet points and I was like, oh, what's on eBay right now? And like, as of the time of this video, there's a Louis available for sale. But it's not one I built. It's somebody else built it, and I don't know who they are. Might be a good portabilizer, but I don't recognize the eBay name. And then there's an Ashita for sale for like $2,000. And I personally, I would never buy a portable Wii for more than $1,500, unless it's something crazy. I mean, I'm biased because I sell mine for $1,500, but I think the Ashita is $2,000, and that is not worth. That is far too expensive for what you should pay for a portable Wii. Um, but if you ever see like a portable on eBay and you're like, hey, is the seller on this good? Is this like worth the money? You can feel free to DM me for that. I'm happy to like look it over and be like, oh, is this a reasonable sale or not? And try and help with that. Although no guarantee that I won't just yoink it out from under you. Winky emoji. But yeah, buying portables it's a tricky process. You can also check the BitBuilt forums. Sometimes somebody will build a portable and then post it for sale there. And then on the BitBuilt forums, you can click on the user's profile. You can see what other portables they built. Have they been there for a long time? Have they built a lot of successful portables? But even then, it's not a guarantee. Like even today, somebody sold a PS2 portable a couple weeks ago, and his build quality was a little shoddy. But somebody did buy it, and apparently it doesn't work, and they're now having issues getting it working. So buying portables is always a process. It's a huge thing, which is why I would recommend building portable Wiis, because that's what I do. And you know what? I'm pretty happy with the portables I've got. And so I figured I'd start like by explaining how I found portables, how I got into portables, how I got good at building portables, and then talk about some more general advice after that. So the way I discovered portable GameCubes was I was on my iPad, and I had recently gotten like back into like GameCube games because that was what I had played as a kid. And I'd like set up Dolphin emulator on my laptop, and I'd also recently discovered Pokemon. Because I had never played a Pokemon game before Pokemon Go. I'm one of those weird people where that was the first Pokemon game I ever played. And so on my iPad, I ran a GameCube search for Pokemon or GameCube Pokemon games. Because I was like, well, I think there were some for the GameCube. I'm enjoying GameCube stuff. I'm enjoying Pokemon. Let's combine the two. And in the Google search bar recommendations, it was GameCube Portable when you type in GameCube PO. And I was like, oh, Nintendo made those? So I clicked the Google recommended thing, and then I went down the rabbit hole of some YouTube videos. There were a bunch of like news articles about various GameCube portables, like the Envision. There was, I don't remember what it's called. There was this white one that was really, really cool, and I loved it. So I said, oh, okay, this is great. So modders make them. How do I buy one? And then I went down another rabbit hole. All right, how do I buy these? And I couldn't find anyone that sold them. And then when I would find like old eBay listings and stuff, it was for like $1,000. And at the time, I was 15. I did not have like consistent big income. I had to save up. I wanted to buy stuff. And so I was like, all right, well, I can't afford that. Can I build my own? And so I started running Google searches again. I found some old internet forums. I found the Mod Retro forums, which very outdated, even at the time, which was 2016, I think was when I was running these. But what I did find was a GameCube portable guide called Kazar's Portable GameCube Guide. And it's charming. It has its own, it definitely has its own personality to it. It's essentially a compilation of a bunch of other people's guides and diagrams and such. And I looked it over and I understood pretty much nothing. So it was talking about things like soldering and ground and power and audio amp and lots of big words that I didn't understand. And so I went, well, this is really cool and I would love to do this, but I'm just not going to do it right now. And so I bookmarked the page. It was like summer. So I bookmarked the page and then kind of forgot about it. And then a few months later, it was Thanksgiving, and we went up to visit my great aunt. And you know what? My great aunt's great, but I was kind of bored. And so I found the bookmark tab again. And conveniently, in the time between when I initially found the guide and that Thanksgiving, I learned how to solder. I just happened to take like an electronic circuits class at my high school. And so I learned what soldering was, and I was very bad at it. Like, terrible at soldering, but I was like, oh, I know what that is now. A lot of this stuff makes more sense. And so I went through, I started making lists of all the things I would need to buy and all the tools I would need, wire, solder, all that stuff. And so I made like a Christmas list of all the things I wanted. And I was like, all right, Mom and Dad, I want these things. And there's like a couple other random things not related to modding that I would want. And then I got nothing related to modding for Christmas. I got all the other things. But conveniently, my birthday was in January, and I turned 16. And so I got a job. I worked at a grocery store, and I was making enough money to like build portables. And so shortly after that, I discovered the BitBuilt forums, which was a forum where people actually were active. And there were people who would answer questions. People were posting new, cool projects. And so I started getting involved there and posting. And so, shortly after that, I discovered Wii portables. Because before that, I was only interested in GameCube portables because I was like, oh, I want to play GameCube games. I should build a GameCube portable. But if you're interested in GameCube games, you should build a Wii portable, because Wii portables are a lot easier to build. I think I've talked about it in like every video I've ever uploaded, so I won't run down the list of why GameCube portables are inferior. But yeah, I started building a Wii portable. It was called the Waluigi, and it was a disaster. Because, like I said, I was bad at soldering. I missed the class where we were taught how to solder because I was sick, and then I came back the day where we were soldering. I didn't really know what was going on. I made the rookie mistake of we were soldering like these ICs to boards, and the ICs are like rows of pins right next to each other. And so I was like, oh, I'll do this the easy way. I'll just run a big line of solder along every single pin on the IC, which works great if you're trying to make a mechanical connection. But when you're making an electrical connection and you short every single data, power, and ground pin together, that doesn't work. Electronics don't like that. And so that's how bad I was at soldering. I think a lot of people assume that like, oh, I was always naturally good at soldering. And I was not. I was bad at soldering. And so the Waluigi, I worked on it for like 6 months. It always almost worked. There was always just one problem with it, but that problem always shifted around and changed. And I do want to do a YouTube video where I rebuild it and kind of go over like why it was a failure. I think that would be a cool video. But eventually I just kind of gave up on the Waluigi and I said, all right, it's time to start something new. And so I did the Waker of the Weaned, which was my second portable Wii. And that one, since I had a better grasp of how to properly solder, and I knew how to better design a portable, because the Waluigi was designed very badly. It was literally just a box where I kind of super glued and hot glued components into it, which is not how you should design a portable. You should 3D print screw posts and have everything connect very nicely, have a good plan. But through everything I learned on the Waluigi, I was able to build a good portable Wii that I used to play games, used it quite a bit, and I was really happy with it. And then from there, it was just kind of okay, I'm getting better at soldering, I'm getting better at designing portables, things were going well. And then after that, I built the Louie, and I went, okay, what if I tried to sell these now? Because I'm pretty good at building portables, I'm good at soldering, I think I've got the skills to do it. And so I made the Louie YouTube video, which was very inspired by Shank mods. Because in between the Waker video I made and the Louie video I made, you can tell there's a big swing in the quality of the video. And that is all due to Shank, because Shank started putting out consistent, high-quality uploads of portables he built with crazy revolutionary ideas like a script and humor and things like that. And it was like, oh, well, I could probably do those things, and I could maybe get videos that get hundreds of thousands of views. And so I kind of copied the Shank mods formula for my first couple videos, and they performed very well. And so I was able to quit my job. I was working as a custodian at the time, and I was able to just build portable Wiis, which was really fun for a while, until I got burnt out on it. But yeah, that was how I got into eventually YouTube. And then after following kind of the Shank mods formula, I went, okay, I kind of want to have my own identity. I don't want to be a Shank mods clone. I want to be my own person. And so that's kind of why my last couple of videos have had more of me in it, and more of my personality, and a little bit more of my style. But yeah, so that's how I got into portables. The way I learned how to solder was by building the Waluigi, which was a terrible way to learn because I broke Wiis, I broke circuit boards, I damaged so many things, just because I didn't take the time to learn how to solder. And so that's where it comes in. How should you learn to build learn how to build a portable? And the best place to start is where I eventually ended up, which is the BitBuilt forums. So I know forums are a little bit outdated. They aren't the hot new place to go and learn anything. But they're still good, especially for things like portables, where people can save their work logs, guides can be uploaded and be permanent. Everything lasts a bit longer than a Discord server. And so I'd recommend going to the BitBuilt forums and checking out the guide section. There's a guide section. It's at the top of the BitBuilt forums. And if you go there, there are various sections for more general guides, like voltage regulators, controller wiring, and there's also more specific stuff on a console-by-console basis. There's a good trimming guide for the Wii, for the PS2. I think N64 has one. I think GameCube technically has one, but don't build a GameCube portable. I'll flame you if you do. But definitely check out, if you're looking to build a Wii portable, the Wii section. There are guides in there about how to identify what Wii motherboards you can use when you want to trim. There are guides on where you should cut, how to relocate things. And so that is where you should start. Those things are critical for building a portable Wii. Great resources. Then other things that are worth checking, there's the cutting edge section of the forums, which is where people post like their final projects, their completed builds. And that's really good if you're looking for inspiration or if you want to see like other just cool projects. Shortly below that, there are like groupings for each console. So if you click on like the Wii section, you can go through and you can see like other people's Wii portable work logs. And I'd highly recommend going through and just reading a bunch of those because you get to watch other people make mistakes. And so if you see other people's mistakes, that helps you avoid those things and not do those when you're building your own portable. Further down, there's the 3D printing section, which has a model repository, which is where you can find like printable files for other people's projects. There are a few like good portables to start with. I think the best one right now is the Ashida. That's spelled Ashida. It's a portable designed by Wesk. It's the one where it's like a GameCube controller, but there's a screen in the middle. And it's a really well-designed portable. There's a good bill of materials for it. You can buy all the circuit boards for it from 4-Layer Tech. And I think it's the best beginner portable by a pretty significant margin. Because it's got lots of people have built it. Case files are open source. And it's a relatively easy build. There's a lot of space. Your wires don't have to be super tightly managed into like tight things or anything. There's a bit of flex with it, and it's just a really cool portable. Because I love the GameCube controller design with it. But if you don't like the GameCube controller design, or it is a very big portable, so if you're looking for something smaller, then a couple other options are the G-Wii, which is spelled G-Wii. That's one of G-Man's designs. It's a very like simple, generic kind of portable Wii. But it's probably about as easy to build as the Ashida. And it is smaller. It's a little bit more portable. But it does require you to solder 2 batteries, which is a little bit tricky. It's not like something insane. If you're soldering to a Wii motherboard, you can solder to batteries just fine. But a lot of people don't really like doing it, so that's one advantage the Ashida has. And then another option is one of my portable designs, which is the Louie, which is spelled Louii. And that's another sort of rectangle, simple portable. It's smaller than the G-Wii, a lot smaller than the Ashida, but it is a little bit trickier to build. The Wii trim you have to do is a little bit tighter. You have to manage your wires really carefully, or else it won't close all the way. And it's definitely trickier. So I wouldn't recommend it unless you're pretty comfortable with that sort of thing. But if you really like the design, I'd say build an Ashida first if you like the Ashida, and then build a Louie later. And then, of course, you could always design your own portable. The essential skills for building like a portable that's already designed are you need to know how to read diagrams and follow instructions, which is it's kind of weird because I had the same thing happen to me where when I first started looking at like building portables, like I would look at the definitive Wii trimming guide and go, oh, I do not understand what's happening here, because you just see like all these diagrams and my brain just shut down. I could not like bring myself to comprehend what was happening, even though it's really simple. It's just color-coded pictures where it's like these things need to connect to these things and this goes here. And so I would just be careful when you're looking at those. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. I think it happens to a lot of people. It's not too complex. But it's always one of those things where when you look at it initially, it's just stressful to look at. So anyways, that's an important skill to have. You need to know how to solder well, which that just comes with practice, and I'd recommend practicing your soldering before you build a portable Wii. Because when you build a portable Wii, you buy some expensive boards. And I have watched a lot of people break those expensive boards because they were just really bad at soldering. I think there are some kits on Amazon you can buy. You want to practice SMD soldering, which is finer soldering, and you want to practice soldering to vias. And you can like practice on like old dead, like if you have any like dead electronics, those could be good for practicing because there's lots of little components on those that you can practice your soldering on and get good with. So I'd recommend checking out like kits from Amazon, and then just any old electronics you have. Those are good for learning, and that's what you need to do before you start trying to build a portable Wii, because that is probably the point where most people fail, is when they go in, they trim a Wii, and then they try soldering to it, and then they break something, and then they go, okay, I'm not good enough, I'll never be able to build a portable Wii, I'm done. And it's always kind of sad to see that happen, but it's pretty common. So practice is perfect, or practice makes perfect. I don't know what the phrase is. Whatever. This isn't kindergarten. You'll figure it out. And then the one other skill that's really important is knowing how to use a multimeter. Which a multimeter is one of those like things that has 2 prongs on it, and you like poke different spots and it goes beep, 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 beep. Stuff like that. And those often like look harder to use than they are, because there's a whole bunch of different settings on that. You need to know how to use like 2 of them. You need to know how to check for continuity. You need to know how to measure resistance, and you need to know how to measure voltage. Those are like the only 3 things I ever use my multimeter for, and it has like a million other functions. So don't be too scared off by how like scary looking it is. That's another thing where it's like, oh, this is overwhelming. But in reality, it's relatively simple for the things you actually need, and then everything else is kind of just falls into place. And then as far as like extra skills go that are helpful when you're building a portable Wii but aren't necessarily required, there's the ability to 3D model, which most like 3D modeling is just drawing rectangles and circles and then extruding them, making them like thick. That's how I design like every portable case I've ever built. It's just squares, rectangles, circles, the occasional curve. And the tough part isn't learning how to use the software, because again, that's another thing where 3D design software, there's a million different tabs, a million different tools you can use, but you really only need to use like 10 of them. Like I use the extrude feature, I use the sketch feature, and I use the dimension feature. And so the tough part when you're designing a portable is figuring out like how you're going to design it, and designing things in the right order, and making sure you don't forget about components. And so that stuff just kind of comes with time. As you design a portable, you'll make mistakes, but you'll figure it out eventually. As far as 3D modeling software goes, if you want to learn one, you want to pick one up, you want to design your own portable, I'd recommend Fusion 360. I think you can get a hobbyist license for it, so it's free. It's really simple to use. That's what most portabilizers use. I personally use Autodesk Inventor, which is a little bit harder to pick up and learn, but I learned how to use it in high school. I had a couple classes that used it, and so that's just what I'm comfortable and familiar with. But if you have a 3D modeling software that you are comfortable and familiar with, don't feel like you need to switch. Unless you're using... you don't want to use organic modeling softwares most of the time. So that's things like Blender. Those aren't fantastic for designing things that you're going to actually print out and use in real life. But those skills can come in handy. If you know how to do organic modeling, I feel like engineering modeling is probably easier. But maybe that's just because I don't know how to do organic modeling. As far as other skills go, designing circuit boards. Circuit boards are a little bit tricky. There's a lot more involved because you have to find like the parts you're going to design with. But circuit boards are super, super cool, especially when you're designing your own custom portable. Like it's really what custom circuit boards are what have leveled up portabilizing over the last 3 years. So I'd recommend learning KiCad, KiCad. That's a really good software for learning circuit board design. It's kind of the go-to. It's the best one. I use Eagle because I messed up. I should have learned KiCad. I regret not learning it. But if you're familiar with Eagle, it'll work fine. And then if you're rich, there's also Altium, which is like the god tier circuit board design tool. But it's super expensive to use, and you don't need it. But if you've got access to it through like a college or like a job or something, then go for it. It's great. Oh, one other thing with 3D modeling. On the BitBuilt forums, under the 3D modeling section, there's a place where you can see 3D scans. So that's a big credit to Wesk for that. He bought a really nice 3D scanner, and he's just been scanning controllers and consoles and all sorts of things. And so it's a little more challenging to use those scans to like design something. But if any of those scans look really nice to you, that's a really great way to start with a good base that you know is going to be comfortable, and then design from there. So yeah, other skills that are really good to have: 3D printing. You don't need to own you don't need to have your own 3D printer in order to build a portable. If you're building a pre-designed portable like the Ashita, you can reach out to somebody on the BitBuilt forums. You can make a post in the marketplace section. You can say, hey, I want an Ashita case in this color, or a Louis case in this material. And then usually people will help out. I'd say a reasonable price for a case is probably between 25 and 50 bucks, depending on how big the case is, how many parts it has, all that stuff. Another option, if you don't want to like deal with interacting with real people, is there are 3D printing websites that'll do 3D prints for you. There is PCBWay, which I'm biased. They sponsor me for stuff, so don't laser onto them too hard. I have a heavy bias towards them. But they do really pretty cases. I'd say they're worth it if you're trying to get like a clear case that's dyed, or you don't want to paint your own case. They do painted cases. The quality isn't incredible. It's like fine. The quality is about on par with what I can do a paint job for, and my painting skills aren't great. But if you're just looking for like a usable case, you're not into like colors or pretty stuff, or you're down to paint your own case, you can also check out JLC PCB. They do 3D prints. Their 3D printing prices are insane. Like super cheap for pretty high quality cases. So check them out too, if any of that sounds interesting to you. They just don't do colors and such. Now, if you're going to design your own portable, I would highly recommend you have access to a 3D printer near you. It doesn't need to be your own 3D printer. You can use like colleges, your high schools. Maybe you've got a friend with a 3D printer. But the ability to print as you go and test out assemblies, having your own 3D printer is really crucial. And you don't need one. Like when I designed the Waker of the Weend, I didn't have my own 3D printer or access to a good 3D printer. I designed everything all at once, and then I sent my files to Shank, actually. Shank was the guy who printed the case for me. Thank you, Shank. He printed it, he sent it back to me, and then I did one more revision to fix some stuff, and then the second revision, it just worked, thankfully. I fixed everything, and I was able to just kind of two-shot that design. But that's tough to do, and having your own 3D printer lets you design as you go, and it's a lot easier. If you're interested in buying your own 3D printer, the two best options are the Prusa Mark 3S, MK3S. That's what I have. I love my Prusa. Prusa is just kind of the I want a good 3D printer, and I don't want to have to troubleshoot it all too much. Their designs are pretty iron tight. I used to have a Prusa Mark 2.5. I used it for about 2 years, and then it started to kind of wear out and had some issues, and so I bought a Mark 3S, and I've been using that guy for a couple of years, and it has run flawlessly. All I have to do to it is occasionally like lube up the like the rods that it runs on, and it runs like a champ. And I know G-Man and Wesk and a couple other people have had Prusas that they have run for like thousands and thousands of hours, and they still run like champs. So if you've got money to spend, Prusa is great. I think a Prusa Mark 3S, the kit for it is around $1,000. It's pretty expensive, but it's one of those, you buy it, it just works, it's wonderful. And for me personally, I hate troubleshooting my tools. Like, I can troubleshoot my own portables because that's my fault, but when I have something else that isn't working, it just frustrates me to no end. So I'd rather be lazy, spend money, and buy something nice. But if you're a happy tinkerer and you love tinkering and upgrading and getting your tools like working properly, if that's something you enjoy, then the Ender 3 is a great option. Ender 3's cost, I think they're super cheap. They're between $200 and $300 most of the time. And they're just kind of like, they're a decent 3D printer, but they're going to need some upgrades and some maintenance to be like solid consistently. And that's just not something I'm motivated to do. So I'll stick with my Prusa. But if you're on more of a budget, but you want a 3D printer, the Ender 3 is still very good. It's just going to take a little bit more love to get it running really well. And then 2 other skills, artsy skills that I really like, but you don't need for a portable, are painting and resin casting. So painting is just, spray painting your shells of your portables to make them look all pretty. I am bad at it. It takes a lot of work and like trial and error to get like really pretty paint jobs and to make the paint stick and to seal the paint properly. If you want to learn how to do that, I'd recommend going to the custom GameCube controller. They have a Discord server, and they have a lot of really good resources and people who are very good at painting, who can probably point you in the right direction. I've gone through and I've learned a lot from there. I haven't done a paint job in a while, but hopefully my next paint job will be better than my past ones. And then there's resin casting, which is where you take like already existing buttons like GameCube or the Switch, and you make molds with those buttons, and then you use resin and you pour in dyes and glitter and all sorts of different things to make really cool buttons. I love resin casting. Resin casting, I think, is one of the things that really helps set some of my portables apart, because I can make buttons in any color I want, and that just kind of opens up the floodgates to theming and really pretty portables and just things like that. And resin casting isn't super expensive to get into. If you want to go crazy and get really nice stuff, then you could buy like a pressure pot and a vacuum chamber. But really all you need is resin and you need silicone molds, or silicone like 2-part mold maker things. And so again, custom GameCube Discord is going to be a really good spot to like learn about the materials and the process and stuff. But if custom buttons interest you, and those are good for more than just portables, like your own controllers and stuff, I think it's a really fun thing to start with. It is a little bit messy, it is a little bit smelly sometimes, but I love making pretty buttons. So that's something I'm passionate about. I really enjoy it. And yeah, if that's something that interests you, that's a great place to start out with. It's also a good painting and like resin casting are also a good place to start with like other mods, because portabilizing is like jumping into the deep end. You can do it, but aesthetic mods are also super cool. I love like custom controllers and all that. So if that interests you, that's also a great place to start. You can build up some skills that'll be really good for portables eventually, but are a little bit simpler. Anyways, I think that's pretty much all the skills I have that you don't need all of them, but those are all good things to understand and be aware of when you're going into portabilizing for the first time. Again, soldering, most important. If you can solder well, you can build a portable. That is the key, that is the crux of all portabilizing. And so then I went ahead and I made a list of just like some general random advice stuff, because I've been building portables for 5 years, almost 6 now, I guess. And I have watched a lot of people fail, unfortunately. And so I have some advice for how not to fail. The first big one, mantra for building portables: buy nice or buy twice. It is incredibly common that people will go and they'll be like, okay, I want to build a portable Wii, but I only have $50. How do I do it? It's like, you can't. Or someone will come in and they'll be like, okay, I see that there's this board here that's really good for like $60, but I'm going to go my own route and buy these for $10. And it's like, well, those are $10 for a reason. They're very cheap. They're going to wear out. They might not even work. And then usually what happens is people will buy cheap stuff. They'll be really disappointed that it doesn't work, and they'll be like, well, I already wasted money. I don't want to waste more money, whatever. And so that's just kind of where their portabilizing career ends. So we need to spend good money on parts. There's no like cheap workaround for parts. You just kind of need to buy some things. The 4-layer tech suite, I recommend checking out 4layertech.com. They have power management boards, they have audio amp, they have controller. I use their boards in all of my projects because they're really well designed. They have really good features, and they are expensive, but they aren't unreasonably priced. Like, I have been in the world where I am building and designing my own circuit boards and having to buy and assemble them, and it is a headache. It is a lot of work to do that, and it is just worth just buying them from someone else who is happy to assemble them. And they're very high quality boards. They're very high quality people. The team is G-Man, Shank, and Aurelio. I talked about G-Man and Shank earlier. They're great people. Aurelio is a fantastic designer, really cool guy. And they run a store to help make portabilizing better. That is their goal, and they're very good at it. So their stuff is expensive. I'm not sponsored by them, but they are my friends. But I would be buying stuff from them even if I hated them. That is the honest truth of it. And then you also need to spend relatively good money on tools. Soldering, it's very important to be good at soldering, but you can only be so good at soldering if your soldering iron is terrible. It's really common people be like, oh, I've got my grandpa's old soldering iron. And it's like, well, grandpa's old soldering iron is trash. I'm sorry. Grandpa's great, but don't use a soldering iron. As far as soldering irons go that are good, you only need to spend like $30-$40 to get a good soldering iron. You could buy the Pine Sill, which I have never used, but I've heard really good reviews on it from other portabilizers. It connects, it's like powered by USB-C. It's really, really cool. Super small. I might buy one just for like travel and stuff for when I go to conventions. I think it is sometimes kind of hard to get your hands on one because they're so popular. And then there's like the Weller WLC 100, I think is the model name. It's another one that's in like that $40 range. It has temperature control. It's built by Weller, who's a super like reliable company. So that's another option for soldering iron. And then that's kind of like the main tool that you just can't cheap out on. And then just be prepared to buy things like wire and solder and flux and maybe some screwdrivers or some tweezers. You probably only need to spend, if you're coming from this brand new, you have no tools, you can probably get all the tools you need for like $100-ish. It's not a huge buy-in, but just know that you may need to spend some money to get some good stuff that are good enough to build a portable with. And just be wary of cheaping out on stuff. A decent portable will usually cost between $200 to $300 just in raw parts, depending on like what you already have on hand. Do you have your own 3D printer? Do you need to buy a 3D printed case? All that stuff. It fluctuates from portable to portable, but that is kind of the general benchmark of how expensive you should expect a portable to be. Which it's kind of expensive. That's just kind of how it is. If you're like deciding between, do I want to build a portable Wii or do I want to buy a Nintendo Switch? I mean, you should probably buy a Nintendo Switch unless you are super passionate about portable Wiis. That's kind of the honest answer I would give. But yeah. As far as, hang on. One thing you should not spend money on, I made a note of this because I ran into these earlier, is when you're buying Wii motherboards or you're buying Wiis to build portables out of, if you go on eBay and you search Wii portable, these Wii motherboards will come up. And they'll say like Wii motherboard made for portable Wii mod. And then they'll sell them for like $100. And that is a scam. Do not buy those. You can get the Wiis you need for like $20 to $30 usually. You don't need to be spending $100 or $90 on just the motherboard. That's someone who's like I don't even, like the description on those are really weird. It's not, I don't think modders are selling those motherboards. I think it's people who have like figured out that people want that particular motherboard design. But I'll run a quick explanation. So when you're building a portable Wii, you need to use what's called a 4-layer motherboard. So circuit boards have like layers on them. They have like 2 outside layers and then sometimes some internal layers. And so there are 2 different kinds of Wii motherboard model. There are 4-layer models, which have the 2 outside layers on the top and the bottom, and then 2 inside layers. And then there are the 6-layer Wii models, which have a layer on the top, a layer on the bottom, and then 4 layers on the middle. And 6-layer Wii motherboards are older Wii motherboards that work great. There's nothing wrong with them, but you can't use them for portables. Well, you can, but you shouldn't use them for portables because they use a lot more power and they can't be trimmed as small. And so it's always better to just use a 4-layer motherboard. Like for reference, I think a 6-layer motherboard versus a 4-layer motherboard, you get half the battery life. So if you try to use a 6-layer board, you're just crippling your portable. So 4-layer Wiis are easy to identify. I'd recommend checking out, there's the revision identification guide on the BitBuilt forums underneath the guide forum section and then the Wii section. And so that walks you through how to identify them. Essentially, if your Wii motherboard is a color other than white or if your Wii motherboard doesn't have GameCube ports, or sorry, if the Wii is a color other than white, not the motherboard. So if it's black or red or blue, or if it doesn't have any GameCube ports on the top of it, then it is a guaranteed 4-layer motherboard, and you can use that to build a portable. And so usually I'll let you in on the strat. The way to get your hands on motherboards for building portables is to go on eBay and search black Wii broken. And then usually what'll come up is Wiis with broken disk drives. And the best part about portables is that you don't need a disk drive. And so it's really easy to just go, okay, well, I'm just going to take the disk drive off. And so you can get Wiis, perfect for portables, for pretty cheap. It's also worth checking like flea markets or Goodwills or thrift stores near you. I found good deals on Wiis at those places before. But eBay is just kind of a consistent go-to. So don't spend a bunch of money on a Wii motherboard. You don't need to spend more than 20 or 30 bucks. Sometimes even less if you can find like a good source for them. But yeah, that is what I would recommend for sourcing Wiis. Please do not go on eBay and just buy up the entire stock of black broken Wiis and try and resell them. I don't think it would work because there are a lot of black Wiis out there. Like I rarely have issues finding them for cheap. But yeah, don't be that guy. Don't do it. As far as other recommendations go, when you are soldering, even when it's just like a test thing, keep your wiring neat, keep your wiring organized. Don't end up with like a rat's nest of just a bunch of wires tangled together. Because a very common phrase I see when people are having issues is, my wiring isn't working. And then they will post a picture of their wiring. And somebody will say, that looks really messy. I can't really follow what's going on there. You need to clean that up. And then they'll say, oh, this is just for testing. I'll clean up my wires later. And it's like, well, you're testing now, and it's not working. Your wiring is probably the culprit. You just need to clean it up. And so even when you're doing like test bench stuff, route your wires nice and neatly. Keep them all like as straight as you can. Make it nice and simple, easy to follow. Because clean wiring it's good. It helps avoid issues. Make sure your solder joints are nice and clean. Don't have wires with a bunch of like exposed wire at the end. It's just an important skill to build up. And then when you're building the final thing, you've already gotten used to organizing your wires, and it's a lot easier to just manage your wires as you go. Yeah, that's just one of those like frustrating things where it happens so often where someone's like, my thing isn't working. And it's like, well, we can't tell what's going on. You gotta wire better. And they're like, oh, I'll do it later. What's my problem? It's like, well, okay, okay, whatever. But yeah, that's a whole thing. Another thing, when you're asking for help through like the BitBuilt Discord or through the BitBuilt forums, if you're having an issue that you're trying to troubleshoot, post pictures of your wiring and of everything you've got. Because sometimes someone will go, I trimmed a Wii motherboard and it isn't booting. What did I do wrong? And there are so many things that could be the culprit when you have like a Wii trim that isn't booting. And so it's always frustrating to be like, okay, we can't tell, post some pictures. So just preemptively post pictures every time you're having an issue. It'll make people happy, I promise. That's just a general piece of advice when you're like posting stuff for people to troubleshoot with. Okay, what else? Oh, another thing. If you're going to go on the forums of the Discord and you're going to ask questions, listen to the answers you get, particularly when it's from someone who knows what they're talking about. This is something I used to do too. This is not something that like I'm a snob about. I used to be that guy who would be like, hey, how do I do a good paint job? And then somebody would be like, actually, somebody was Mad Morta. She's very good at painting, built a bunch of really cool portables. And she would be like, okay, you need to sand down the case a lot. You need to apply a couple coats of primer. You need to apply a couple coats of just the base paint that you want. Don't apply thick coats. And then you need to put clear coat on afterwards. You need to let it set for like a week. And I read all that and I went, I don't want to do that. I'm going to paint my own way. And so I literally just, I took my purple can of spray paint and I just put on really thick layers. It was an awful, awful paint job. And now I feel bad about it because she spent the time to like write out like a really nice, straightforward guide on how to do a good case, a good paint job. And she was right. Her instructions were correct. She knew what she was talking about. I knew that she knew what she was talking about. But at the same time, I'm just like, whatever. I'll just do my own thing, man. And so it's kind of frustrating when someone asks for advice and then ignores it. I've been on the other end of that stick. Now that I'm the guy who knows what he's talking about most of the time. So yeah, if you're going to ask questions, you can always ask for clarification. If somebody says, well, you need to do this, and you're like, okay, well, why do I need to do that? It's okay to ask why in a polite way. There's nothing wrong with that. Just don't, if you know you don't know what you're talking about, don't show that you don't know what you're talking about through that. But asking questions is good. People on BitBuilt are generally happy to help. You just need to be like a reasonable human being and don't waste their time. That's essentially it. And then, let's see. Yeah, I think the last general piece of advice, unless I think of something else. The one thing that always makes me so sad when people like are getting into portabilizing Wiis and they're trimming a Wii. So, okay, there's the Wii trimming guide, and the Wii trimming guide has very clearly drawn lines on where you should trim. And sometimes people don't follow those lines, either on accident or on purpose, and they just butcher their Wii motherboard. And that is always just, it's always just so sad to see. Like, they'll just cut right through a critical chip and be like, oh, I just thought I could cut there. It's like, why did you think that? Like, if you ever, like, are looking at someone's trim, like a trim someone else has done, and you're like, okay, did they have to do anything weird for that? You can always just ask. But generally, for a first portable, I'd recommend sticking to the basic trim lines. I think the basic trim is called OMG WTF trim. That's like an old deep cut reference to like GameCube portabilizing lore. But yeah, stick with simple trims, follow trim lines. Don't go off and start trying to make your own Wii trims until you understand like all the components on a Wii and how they all work. Because those are important. And sometimes people try to skip those steps, and it's not the move. It is not the move, gotta say. Okay. Oh, okay. So now moving on from like portable building stuff. A really common question I get is, hey, I want to build portables. What should I study in college if I want to build a portable? Which isn't a terribly unreasonable question. But the thing is, college doesn't help a ton when it comes to building portable Wiis. With my experience, I went to high school. I went to a really cool high school. It was like one of those rare public high schools where everyone actually cares, and it's really well run. I was really lucky to go there, and they had like an engineering, like kind of pathway thing that you could go down. And so I got to learn a bunch of really useful skills for portables, like soldering, 3D design, all that stuff. And then I got to practice that stuff more on my own and get better at it and use it to build portables. College is a little bit different. So I took the engineering path. I said, hey, I love building portables. I should do electrical engineering. That's just like the next step. And I did electrical engineering classes for 2 years, and I did not enjoy them at all. I understood the material fine. I'm a smart dude. I'm smart. I was able to like keep up with the homework, keep up with the concepts. I got good grades, but I did not enjoy it. Electrical engineering it just isn't fun for me. I love building portables. I love designing portables. Circuit boards are wonderful. I love designing them when there's a purpose in mind. But just the concepts you need to be a good electrical engineer were not interesting to me. I was bored. I was unhappy. And so I switched over to marketing. So now I'm a cheap business student. I smoke weed, drink alcohol, go to parties, don't study for tests, yo. And I like marketing a lot more. I think partially because it's kind of linked to YouTube, and like the concepts that you learn in marketing can often be applied to YouTube stuff, and that's kind of where my passions lie, more than electrical engineering. So, moral of the story is, if you want to build portables, it is way easier to learn those skills on your own. There's lots of good YouTube tutorials and other resources where you can learn how to solder, how to design circuit boards, how to design 3D prints. And those things are going to be geared a lot more towards actually doing something than college is. Which doesn't say that college is necessarily a waste of time, but like a lot of like the stuff with electrical engineering is conceptual based, and then you'll go and you'll get a job, and then they'll drill you more in the actual doing of stuff. Now, I will say that the best portabilizers, the people who are pushing metas, and designing new boards and designing things for portables. Almost all of them are electrical engineers in some capacity. The skills you learn as an electrical engineering student are helpful eventually. And so, I mean, I don't think you necessarily want to base your whole, what am I going to go to college for, on pushing a portabilizing meta. But it is good to know. Do want to give credit to people like G-Man and Aurelio and other people like Yvital Griffin, who do really good electronic design stuff. And their skills from doing electrical engineering stuff have really helped them in that. So skills aren't useless, but if you're looking at a potential career path, I wouldn't base it on portables. I'd find something else, another passion that you love, unless portabilizing is your whole world. And I mean, even for me, portabilizing has been my big hobby, my primary hobby for years. And even that wasn't enough to make me love electrical engineering. There's just kind of a disconnect there. So that's my recommendation there. College is great sometimes, but this is not the best path always. Okay. That's enough about college and the system there. Another common question I get is, am I too young to start building portables? Because often, I mean, portabilizing, you'd be surprised, potentially. There's a lot of like really young people who are interested in portables. They grew up with the Wii or the GameCube. And they're still like 13, 14, and they want to build portable Wiis because it's cool and they want a portable system to play on. And the answer is no. Generally, a lot of, even some like really, really good portabilizers started building portables when they were super young. Shockslayer, I believe, was in his early teens. G-Man started building portables when he was in his early teens. I think Jackson S. He hasn't built a portable in a while, but he's another young guy who was like 14 building crazy cool portables. And so you are not too young to start building portables, but there are some roadblocks that you should be aware of if you're watching this and you're young and you want to build portables. And the first is that I talked about earlier, but portables are expensive to build. You're going to need some sort of consistent income, whether that's rich parents or a part-time job that you work. Any of those will be fine. They'll work. But the price of a portable is something to be aware of before you get into it. Like when I was 15 and I found out about portabilizing, it would have been a waste of my time to try and get into it, if I'm being honest, because I wouldn't have had the motivation to spend all my money on portable stuff. I was making money so slowly that it would have taken me like a year to save up for a portable, or like the parts to build a portable. But once I turned 16 and I was able to, I had my own job, I could buy portable parts, money wasn't as much of an issue. That was like the perfect time for me to get into portabilizing. So income is important, unfortunately. I wish portabilizing could be a cheap hobby. Maybe someday, well, that's a ways out, but maybe someday portabilizing can be a cheap hobby. But right now it just isn't. And the other thing I'd recommend, if you are young and you are interested in building portables, don't go on the Discord or the forums and be like, "Hi, I'm 14. I want to build a portable." Don't go in there and try and bring out the Zoomer humor and try to be funny. It doesn't go well, ever. I will say, it's very common to see someone go in there young and be like, "Hi, I'm 13. Hi, I'm 14. I want to build portable Wiis." Nobody will think you are cool for it. It immediately affects how people perceive you. When they know that you are 13 or 14, you are immediately a dumb kid. And I'm just as guilty of that assumption as pretty much everyone else. Because, look, children on the internet tend to be obnoxious. But that is only because the children on the internet who are obnoxious tell people that they are children or that they are teenagers. Don't go on the internet if you're under 13. That's not allowed. So if you just go and you be a reasonable human being, you act like an adult, not in a weird way, but you act like a mature human being, you post, you respond, you recognize how humor works in this particular internet subcategory you're on, and you can add to that, people will like you and they will treat you like an adult. Like there have been people on the forums who have like been active for like years, and then like casually they'll be like years later, "Oh yeah, I'm only 16." And I'll be like, "Oh, you were a really chill 13 or 14-year-old. Huh, that's cool." And then it doesn't impact my vision of them because they have already established themselves as a mature, responsible human being. And so I'm not like, oh, this is some dumb kid. Oh, look at all these issues they're having. Man, they are just so stupid. But yeah, that's my recommendation. If you're young and on the internet, you don't need to tell people that you're a kid. Just act mature. People will like you a lot more, and you're less likely to get flamed, because that's just kind of how it goes when you're a kid on the internet. Okay, so that essentially wraps up most of the modding stuff I wanted to talk about. I'm running out of stuff, but I've also got like 25 minutes left to fill on my video, so we'll see what I can do. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about content creation, because I also get a lot of DMs from people being like, yo, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be a Twitch guy, I want to make videos, I want to make money. How do I do that? And to start, I am not an expert on any of that. I have 5 YouTube videos ever. One of them have been successful, I will say that. But I'm still learning as I go, and I am far from an expert on any of this. But I get a lot of common questions, so I figured I'd just kind of dump general advice. Try not to come off as too holier than thou throughout this. So yeah, just keep in mind I'm dumb. I don't know how YouTube works. I'm just making videos, man. But yeah, so a really common thing that I see is that it is hard to get views on things when you're starting out. And a lot of the times it's because people who are making stuff, they're in a very saturated market. Like, a lot of people just want to make videos about video games, them playing video games, or video essays about video games, or vlogs, or let's plays, or just all those things. And there's a lot of content like that already out there, which makes it hard to stand out and get views. And so one thing I'd always recommend is trying to find like an interest or a hobby you have that's a little bit unique. Maybe not everyone does it. And then try and find a way to turn that into interesting content. Because that's how Shank did portables. He said, okay, so there are all of these portable Wii videos out there, portable GameCube videos, all those. And occasionally one of them will pop off. Like one of them will get like 1 million views or something. But the formula for making portable Wii videos was pretty much the same. It was, hi everyone, I'm G-Man, I'm Ginger. And today, this is the portable Wii I have designed. These are what all the buttons do. These are the features of it. And I will now sit here and play games in silence for 10 minutes. Now, that's not a terrible video format, but it's not very good. It's not super interesting to watch. Usually the entire reason you're watching the video is because the portable is cool. And Shank was smart and said, okay, what if I consistently started scripting videos and I started working humor in, and I had consistent like theming throughout my videos? And he wasn't the first person to do like scripted videos. But he was the first one to do them consistently over and over again and find consistent success. And so he took a niche interest that there was high potential for, and then started making good, interesting content with that. And so if there is something in your life, you have some hobby or an interest where there's not a whole lot, where there is content for it, like lots of people are making videos for it, but no one's making like really good videos for it, maybe you should start making really good videos for it. That's a good place to start. But I think the most important thing to do is just be doing something new. It doesn't have to be an entirely original concept, but it's just so hard to like get views on videos about video games because so many people are doing that. It's just tough. But if you could find something new or interesting, that just makes things a lot easier. Like, I get to play YouTube on easy mode because my clickbait and my thumbnails and my content all revolve around something that is interesting, and not a lot of people do. Which I'm kind of glad that's where I started with YouTube. Because I used to watch like Mario Maker videos, and I'd be like, oh, that'd be really cool if I could make YouTube videos, but I don't have a good personality for it, so I just won't do YouTube. But there's different kinds of content. There are different ways for your personality to shine through and make good videos. So don't lock yourself into like one style that is the successful YouTuber. Because you can be a hype man, you can be very stoic. There's a wide range of good content creators out there. A few things that people often say that I think are bad mindsets to have are, first of all, hating your own voice. Almost nobody likes their own voice because it just sounds weird when you hear it, like when it's been recorded. But almost everyone has a perfectly fine voice for recording. I didn't like my voice when I first started doing YouTube. But it's just one of those things where after you record enough and you listen to your own voice enough, like I no longer find listening to my own voice jarring. And I've only made a few videos. You just kind of get used to it. You go, oh yeah, that's what my voice sounds like. And you stop having these expectations of, okay, this is what my voice sounds like when it comes out of my throat. It sounds really nice to my ears. When it hits my ears, when it's not coming out of my throat, it doesn't sound nearly as good. And that's just kind of how everyone goes. Most people's voices are fine. And I mean that genuinely. Like if you think of like most content creators, like some of them have fantastic YouTube voices. Their voices are nice and deep. And they've got that nice British or Australian accent. And if you've got one of those voices, you're lucky. That is helpful. That is definitely helpful. But there isn't like this perfect YouTube voice that you need to have. Because normal voices are fine. I've got a normal voice. It's fine. It's not perfect. I could probably take voice lessons and come out with a better voice, but I don't have the motivation for that right now. I would say the only time, like maybe your voice is going to be a problem, maybe you have someone else like record the audio to your videos, is if you have like a really, really thick like accent that makes it hard to understand what you're saying. It might be worth it, but honestly, there's some creators who have pretty thick accents and they do very well because they make up for it through other ways. But I can only think of 2 times ever where like someone's voice was a deal breaker on a YouTube video. And odds are you do not have a voice that bad. Alright, moving on for voices. Another thing that comes up a lot is I have these really good ideas, but I don't want to make those ideas until I'm getting views. And like people are watching my videos and it's worth making them. And I think the tough part is that nobody wants to watch like mediocre content. Like if you have really good innovative ideas, you kind of have to do those even from the beginning. You got to have a base to start from that people go, oh wow, this is good. Even if they aren't going to get very many views, you kind of have to, you're kind of assuming if you save it for later that you're going to run out of ideas. And you can't run out of ideas when you're doing YouTube. You gotta always be thinking of new stuff. Like I've got a list of just so many random topics that will probably never be made, but don't think that like you're having your best ideas already. You're gonna have better ones later. You'll be able to make better and bigger YouTube videos. So don't hold back from good ideas because you want them to get views. I think that's just, it's a losing mindset in my eyes. Another thing is people often ask, okay, what sort of equipment do I need to make YouTube videos? And I would recommend not going crazy. Your phone is probably a very good camera. If your phone was made in like the last like 4 or 5 years, maybe even older, like I used to use a Note 8 for pretty much all my videos up until the most recent one. And it's a solid camera. Like my videos look good. Sure, the camera quality could be better, but I don't think anyone was like, this video's cool and all, but the camera here, it ain't doing it for me. I need to watch something else. So yeah, I would not worry too much about camera. Use your phone. Your phone will be fine. I bought a camera somewhat recently, and cameras are hard to use. Like real cameras, like if you just like pull it out and start using it, it doesn't really look better than your phone. Oh, sorry, I had some gamer rage there. It happens. Yeah, camera. So I bought a camera and I pretty much just mount it above my desk and I use it as like the top-down view for everything. But yeah, I would say it was probably not worth the money. It is worth the convenience for me. So that way I don't have to like use my phone to try and film a top-down perspective. But yeah, don't go out, don't buy a camera unless you're doing something really specific or you're really into cameras. If you're really into cameras and you love fiddling with settings and getting everything perfect, then yeah, buy a camera, film some nicer shots. But I thought I would be more interested in that side of things, but I'm not. I bought the camera and it has just kind of been sitting on default settings, and maybe someday I'll take some time and tweak it. I should just make a friend who's into photography and video stuff and get them to help. But yeah, the one thing that I would say might be worth buying if you're getting into YouTube and stuff is a microphone, because like a headset mic or like your phone, I'd say try it. Try using those as your mics. You don't need insane audio quality, but you want something that at least isn't terrible to listen to. I will say, well, okay, first, like, recommendations for like a cheap mic. Blue Yeti is okay. I think Blue Snowball, I have a couple friends that use those, and that's an all right mic. Like, even just cheap mics like those will be fine for like starting out on YouTube and doing stuff. But there's a lot of settings and stuff that you can tweak, and you really shouldn't put in some work to make those sound nice. The audio on, if you go back and you rewatch the Wee Boy color video, the audio on that video is awful. It is bad. Like, I'm talking into the mic really, really quietly. I'm using a very soft voice, and I'm constantly smacking my lips. And it is bad. Like, it is painful for me to go back and listen to that. And that was just because I wasn't using the proper recording settings, and I was too close to my mic, and I was trying not to wake up my aunt and uncle whose house I was staying with at the time. And yeah, so work with the settings on those. You don't need a crazy expensive mic. I did eventually upgrade to a Shure SM7B and like a whole audio setup. That's what I'm using now. And I really like it, but it's expensive. You don't need to spend that money. And this was just kind of a lazy solution to, okay, I'll just spend a lot of money, get a really nice mic that'll last me hopefully forever. I really hope I don't have to replace this stuff. But yeah, I think the buy nice or buy twice for me has maybe gone a little too far. Important for portables. You don't necessarily need to do it on every piece of equipment. And then when it comes to lighting, if you're doing videos where like you're recording yourself or you're recording like things in your house or something, you don't need to spend a bunch of money on lights. Like I know Shank, he just uses like a lamp he got at a thrift store. It's like one of those lamps with like a bunch of like heads on it, and you could like move them around. And I think he uses that for almost all of his videos. He just like diffuses the light a little bit with pieces of paper, and his videos look good. I got a ring light that I use for filming portables. It's all right. I don't know if it's the best way to film portables, but yeah, I'd stick with like cheaper options. Try and find simple stuff that'll work. Don't go out and buy like key lights and all these fancy stuff unless you really know how to use it. Because if you have knowledge on how all that stuff works, then that's great to have. But generally, probably not worth it. I think that's pretty much it for equipment. As far as editing software goes, I use Premiere Pro. Adobe as a company is terrible. Like their products they are not worth the money. I buy them because I sometimes like work with my friends on videos, and so it's easier to just like share through the like official channel rather than try and, well, here, look. I will say there are cracked versions of Premiere Pro online. It would be incredibly unethical, very illegal, and I would be very upset with you if you were to pirate those softwares. That'd be just atrocious. I would never have any more respect for you, but that is an option if you're a soulless monster. But if you want to use just like a different software, there's DaVinci Resolve, I think it is. I've heard people use that, and they like it more than Premiere. And both Premiere and DaVinci are going to have really good tutorials. Lots of people use them. So yeah, editing softwares are good. Yeah, learning how to use them. Oh, learn how to use shortcuts when you're editing videos. Like just learning like a handful of shortcuts. Like in Premiere, C is cut, V is like your default select, A to grab everything. It makes editing a lot easier. It's worth taking the few minutes to get those into your muscle memory to speed up the editing process. And then another thing, like this is a fear everyone has, like myself included. But with YouTube, a very common thing is that someone will start making videos, they will find success, and then they'll be like, okay, I've got this like one topic, this one theme I do for my videos, but I want to branch out and I want to make more stuff. And so they'll try it, and then their channel tanks because the YouTube algorithm is not kind when people stop watching your stuff. And usually when you switch to something new, you get less views because people are like, oh, this isn't portable Wii. I don't know if I want to watch this. And so when you're starting out and when you're making your own content, I'd say it's worth sticking to your niche for a while, still building up an audience, building up your personality so that people like you for who you are, but than just the content you're making. But it's a tricky balance, and adapting into other forms of content isn't something I can tell you how to do, because I haven't done it myself, but I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking of ideas to like integrate it eventually. But I will probably be sticking to my niche for now. Or you can just be a variety guy from the start, which is tough, but that's an option. And then another thing is live streaming. Like I know there are a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I would love to live stream and just be a streamer. But being a streamer is hard. And I don't mean in like a content making way. I think some people just have like streamer brain where they're very good at talking to no one or talking to an audience and like narrating what they're doing. I do not have that skill. I think I'm a very okay streamer. Like, if nobody is talking in my chat, then I don't have anything to riff off of and like bring up, which, kind of need that skill if you're going to be a streamer. But growing as a streamer is hard. Like if you stream on Twitch 8-10 hours a day, every single day, you probably won't grow almost at all. And that's just because of how like live streaming websites work. Like Twitch is not a good site for discoverability. YouTube is a good site for discoverability on videos, because the YouTube algorithm is built to go, okay, people are watching this video. This person doesn't have very many subscribers, but people like the video, so we'll recommend the video. And then your channel could grow through just a video or two that do really well. But live streams don't work that way because everything is live. And so there's never like, a live stream doesn't just suddenly pop off out of nowhere. Twitch doesn't go, oh wow, a lot of people are watching this live stream, because nobody's getting recommended to the live stream. Oftentimes no one's watching in the first place, even if it's the most incredible content in the world. And so if you're trying to grow on like a streaming platform, I feel like you need to have like a YouTube presence or something where you can upload videos to a place where YouTube can pick it up and recommend it around. But if you're trying to stream, I wouldn't just grind. Twitch isn't really a website you can grind on and find success. You got to be doing new stuff. You got to be introducing people to your channel through other methods. And yeah, just things like that. So live streaming is hard. It's really hard. The way I should have talked about this earlier. The way the Louis video, which was my first video that ever did like well, the way that one grew is I made the video, I uploaded it, I like posted it to the BitBuilt forums, and it got views from like all the modders, all the homies. And then I was like, okay, I got some views, like maybe 1,000, something like that. It was pretty good. And I said, okay, well, what if I like went on Reddit and posted my video to like subreddits that make sense? So I posted it to like r/gaming and r/Pikmin, since it was Louis. It was Louis themed. Louis he's a character from Pikmin. And I posted it to like r/Wii and r/GameCube and all those like relevant subreddits. So I didn't try to spam it too much. And on all the big subreddits I posted it to, it got like no upvotes, no traction. But I posted it to enough smaller communities who like watched the video and like really liked the project that the YouTube algorithm then picked it up and said, okay, a lot of people are coming from offsite to watch this. Let's start recommending it to more people. And so I was able to get away with like self-promotion because my product was cool. I think it's harder to do that if you're just uploading like gaming videos or something. But I was able to do it under the guise of, oh, look at this cool project I made. I'm not trying to farm views from my YouTube channel. Nope. And so yeah, you can do things like that. Reddit is, I mean, it's a website. It's not my favorite, but it is good for things like that. That worked out really well for me. And then from there, I was able to build up enough of a following off of like Instagram and Twitter from my YouTube videos that when I posted the Wee Boy Color video next, I was able to make a viral hit tweet, and it got a lot of views. And since then, most of the time when I finish a project, I try and formulate a tweet that will hopefully go viral, because that really helps. But that's not a guarantee, especially in like simpler formats of content. Okay, well, I am almost out of questions. Another common question I get is people ask me, what are your thoughts on emulation? Is emulation good? Is it bad? Is portable Wii's, is that just like the perfect future? Emulation is dumb and stupid? And the answer is no. Emulation is very cool. I like emulation quite a bit. I use Dolphin a lot, even though I have GameCube and Wii portables, because Dolphin has NetPlay, which is great for when my friends are like, hey, let's play Mario Party. And it's like, we don't want to play the Switch versions because the Switch versions are. And so we fire up like Mario Party 5 or Mario Party 6 and play through there. And emulators are really cool. They're a great way to play old games. And now, like playing emulators portably is a decent option in a lot of cases. Because now you have things like Android phones, which are very powerful. Like on an Android phone nowadays, you can easily emulate GameCube and Wii stuff. You just get like a Bluetooth controller, it'll work. It won't be a flawless experience. Portable Wii will probably be better most of the time. But then you get to things like the Steam Deck, which is just like a handheld console built for modding and like installing emulators and stuff. I think the Switch, Nintendo, don't listen to this, but the Switch can be used, or not the Switch, the Steam Deck can be used for Switch emulation, which is crazy. But yeah, emulation has its place. It is very cool. It's very useful. Highly recommend if you want to play like old games, but you don't want to like dig out like your old consoles and cables and such, or if you want to play a rare game that you don't want to pay $200 for. No, piracy is not an option. It's never an option. Piracy is illegal, especially on old games that Nintendo doesn't sell anymore and refuses to make available. If you pirate those games, you're just scum of the earth. I hate you. Don't do it. But yeah, emulation is cool. I like it a lot. The reason why I build portables, well, initially, I guess the initial reason is because when I started building portables, like 5-6 years ago, emulation on handhelds, like other handheld, like just like phones and such, it wasn't great. It worked okay on like the newest generation of like Samsung phones and Androids and all that, but it wasn't great. So it was like, well, I tried a lot of ways of like playing GameCube games portably. I even I used Dolphin Emulator on my laptop, which my laptop wasn't very good, so it didn't work super well. I tried running games on my old Android phone, which also not very good. I think my favorite way I tried was I had a jailbroken iPad, and someone released like a very, very experimental like Dolphin emulator fork for iOS, and I got really excited. I like downloaded a bunch of games, I backed up a bunch of games and then transferred them to my iPad. I like downloaded the emulator and I like ran like all of my favorite games on it, and then I'd like post like detailed, here's what worked, here didn't work, here's how well the games run. No game ran better than 2 FPS. And then someone was like, dude, this is an experimental emulator. This is never going to work well. And I think actually now there are iOS GameCube emulators that you can use on like jailbroken devices that are pretty good. They work solidly. But I don't know. Setting up stuff like that on iOS is a headache. Apple isn't the ideal platform for any of that. But yeah, emulation is cool. I'm not one of those snobs who is like, part of what they're the only way to play games. Play them any other way. I think there is like some mentality of that. Like some people who build portables do have that mentality. I am not particular enough about emulation versus original hardware. None of that matters to me too much. But yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. All right, so that is pretty much everything. How much longer does this have? I need to talk for like 2 more minutes. I could do that. So, I'm surprised I went this long. I genuinely thought like I only had enough info for like half an hour. Maybe I rambled too much. If so, my bad. But yeah, as far as feedback goes, feel free to leave comments about whether you liked this style, whether you have suggestions for like other things, because I do want to upload videos of just like gameplay of portables, because I think some people like that, and it's also, well, look, it's easy content to make. It's not exactly tough. But I also just kind of like having the footage out there on the internet in case I need it, because sometimes I'm like filming a video and it's like, oh, I need footage of a different portable. And so this is just an easy way to keep it all in one spot. So, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments or wherever. I mean, look, this video probably isn't going to get very many views. You probably have a pretty good chance of having your question picked. So feel free to ask anything. I'm probably not going to get into like super personal stuff. I do like having like, I think it's important for like there to be boundaries between like content creators and viewers and such. And I think sometimes people get a little too lost in the sauce. But happy to talk about games I play. I mean, you can ask anything. If I don't want to answer the question, I'll just ignore it. That's just how it goes. Is there anything else? I'm working on new videos. I've kind of been stalled out for a little while, just because I've been struggling with a couple scripts. I've got like really cool projects that are like all done and ready to go, all designed and stuff. But scripts have been hard recently, just because I'm kind of holding myself to a higher standard. But I'll get there. It'll come with time. I do have one more question here, though. This is a really common one. People ask it a lot. And I figured I'd just give it a quick response. It's a nice, fun question. Does social media and the internet mark the downfall of humanity? Well, at least I didn't die to one Goomba. So I think social media and the internet, I'm not like of the boomer opinion that's going to ruin lives. And, yeah, I gotta go. See ya.